Elie Wiesel once said that without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there will be no civilization, no society, no future. And this quote is especially true when we talk about ancient Egypt, a civilization that redefined the world for many years and became one of the greatest civilizations of all time. Of course, there are many fundamentals that we can gather. Nevertheless, in the following tour we will only cover 9 of the ones which led to the exponential expansion of this civilization. Building a civilization. The fundamentals of ancient Egypt. To begin, we need to clarify that ancient Egyptians were incredible constructors who provided many contributions to the modern architecture. One of those contributions are the mud bricks. Egyptians used mud bricks in the construction of homes, mastabas, and other communal buildings. Mud bricks were made of Nile mud with a mixture of clay and sand. They started to be used during the early dynastic period, the First Dynasty. The average dimensions were between 8 and 15 inches. According to Virginia Emery, in traditional Egyptian villages, knowledge of how to make unfired mud bricks is almost universal. On the other hand, wood was not very common in ancient Egypt. In fact, it did not have any great forests nor many tall trees. Therefore, the production of local wood was mostly of low quality and having to import hardwoods from Eastern Africa. This fact is especially important because since almost all buildings didn't use a lot of wood, carpenters became craftsmen. As the Alter Eagle website mentions it, the carpenters were not free in the modern sense, but they were mostly trained and skilled laborers, being well respected in their communities. Nevertheless, and although these last two building blocks were important to define the civilization, agriculture was fundamental to the success of ancient Egypt. Agriculture was the backbone of ancient Egypt. Economy, having the Nile as their main sources for the fertile soil, allowed them to have a successful farming every year. Therefore, they could produce their own food and clothes. The majority of ancient Egyptians worked on the land. The annual inundation of the Nile was such importance that the ancient Egyptians based their lives around its yearly cycle based on 3 periods of agricultural activity: flooding, sowing, and harvesting. On June to September was the time of flooding, Akhet. October to January was the sowing time, Peret. February-May was the harvest time, Semu. According to Robert Allen, in Egypt, state formation occurred much more rapidly after the adoption of farming than in many other parts of ancient Near East. In other words, agriculture was the foundation of Egypt's economy and government. With this strategic location advantage, Egypt grew exponentially and Memphis became its main capital. The Great Temple of Ptah was one of the city's most prominent structures. The entrance to the temple often had tall pylons that served as guardians to the temples. As the time passed, the temples of ancient Egypt became large complexes with many buildings. Smaller rooms would hold lesser gods and companions to the primary god of the temple. Underground, inner chambers will be other buildings that surrounded the complexes. and they were used as food offering sellers, underground palaces of sorts, and sometimes even as burial chambers. As we can see, these underground chambers were filled with inscriptions and hieroglyphs that narrated not only the use of the chamber, but the significance of the whole temple. In addition to these rooms on the temple complexes and the other underground chambers, other buildings like the House of Life were established. According to tradition, people used to go to House of Life to consult ancient writings when they needed answers to problems of their day, where priests learned to read and write, the place where scribes' school was held, and the place where the children of the rich and the elite went to school to learn economics, law, astronomy, geography, mathematics. It was an educational center that serves as influence to the modern definition of libraries. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica and to the commonly accepted tradition, Memphis was founded about 2925 BCE by Menes, who supposedly united the two prehistoric kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt. It is located south of the Nile River, about 15 miles, 24 kilometers south of the modern Cairo. It was considered as the capital of ancient Egypt for many years, and since 1979 was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Egyptians value knowledge a lot, but more than that, they value tradition and religion in such a way that if somehow a deity resembles an animal, they will worship it. And we can see this kind of worship in inscriptions, statues, and many examples around these temples. A perfect example of this is the worship of the Apis bull, which has been recorded as early as the first dynasty, between 3150 to 2890 BCE. Apis was a god of fertility and primordial power who later became associated with the creator god Ptah. It was also been associated with Osiris as user happy, and it is clearly notices since it was often represented with the sun disk between his horns. Life-size basaltic statues of Apis bulls dedicated by Handras to Saparis and Alexandra are shown here. However, in other occasions, the representations of the deities was not an actual animal, but hybrid creatures like the Sphinxes. Although there have not been found any statues on the pathways that leads to the Djoser Pyramid, it is shown on this tour since the Sphinx was very important for the culture of the ancient Egypt and another building block for the civilization. These creatures were considered as spiritual guardians, and many figures of the creatures were often included in tombs and temple complexes. Therefore, it would not be strange that the Egyptians would have them also in these burial complexes. All of these fundamentals mentioned above led the culture to evolve and transform itself into one of the greatest civilizations, and one of the first glimpses of this was the construction of the Djoser Pyramid, the first building of its kind that created a path for a new era. built as a tomb for the pharaoh Djoser or Soher. The Djoser Pyramid was constructed between 2630 BC and 2611 BC in Saqqara, Egypt. The pyramid was part of a larger 40-acre complex containing a courtyard, temples, and chapels, all enclosed inside a 30-foot wall. The construction of the Steps Pyramid will see the beginning of an ambitious pyramid building program that will culminate with the Great Pyramids at Giza. Imhotep, the man attributed with the design the Step Pyramid, will eventually be regarded as a sort of god. Egyptologist Mark van der Meerop writes on his book, "The King Djoser gave Imhotep a rare honor, allowing his name and title to be carved on the base of one of the king's statues. One of his titles calls him Chief of Sculptors, a phrase fitting for someone who designed the first Egyptian pyramid." We have uncovered and explored some of the many things that made ancient Egypt an incredible civilization, and we have to thank memory and history for letting us take a glimpse into a majestic culture, building a civilization with the fundamentals of construction, agriculture, tradition, and religion. Ancient Egypt, Discovery Tour by Abner Nava.